Hello and welcome. I'm Julia, and today's topic is scientific studies in critical reasoning questions. When it comes to critical reasoning questions, studies are treated a bit differently than you would typically treat them in real life. Because in real life, you would be dubious and you would question methodology, sample sizes, that sort of thing. In fact, this yields a common problem for students who ask AI for help with questions where studies are featured. AI seems to have a particularly difficult time respecting the difference between a scientific study and a premise in a critical reasoning question versus a scientific study in the world. Why is this important? Because of the fundamental rules when it comes to critical reasoning. One of the main rules is that supporting evidence is always taken as 100% true. There is no arguing with it. It must be respected. This limits the number of ways that we can attack or support an argument. I will demonstrate with an example from PTP. Sentiment is said to be a phenomenon characterized by a person's bodily functions, such as heart rate, shifting into response mode before a stressful event actually occurs. To determine whether presentiment is a real phenomenon, a group of researchers reviewed all of the studies of presentiment, the results of which were published during the previous 50 years. Since the researchers found that the vast majority of the studies that they reviewed provided statistical evidence confirming that presentiment is a real phenomenon, they concluded that it is a real phenomenon. Which of the following, if true, most seriously undermines the researchers' conclusion? Let's start by looking at the breakdown. Presentiment is said to be a phenomenon in which a person's bodily functions change in response to a stressful event before the event happens. To determine whether this is real, so researchers reviewed all of the studies, 100% of the studies of presentiment, whose results were published during the previous 50 years. The researchers found that the vast majority of the studies that they reviewed provided statistical evidence confirming that presentiment is a real phenomenon. Conclusion: presentiment is a real phenomenon. Let's look at some answer choices. The results of the studies that indicated that presentiment is a real phenomenon did not all show that it is with the same statistical significance. Does this make the results any less reliable? How big of a difference was it? I think we can expect there to be a bit of a range on the results of multiple different studies without it automatically rendering them useless. Remember, we have to trust that the studies yielded the result the arguments say they yielded. There is a certain level of trust that the studies weren't just horribly methodologically useless. There is a certain assumption that the studies had some integrity too. B, people serving as subjects in studies of parapsychological phenomena such as presentiment are often compensated for their participation. This is a choice that tempts a lot of people, and it can also be tempting to AI. After all, as a society, we are trained to be dubious of compensated reviews. That's why people often disclaim in their reviews if they were compensated or if they got the product for free, and specify that it didn't sway their opinion of the product. Is the thing to keep in mind. Whether participants were compensated or not, is there a clear, predictable difference in the outcome? Not from what the argument has given us. Perhaps they were compensated whether they said they had experienced presentiment or not, in which case the compensation wouldn't matter. Now, if this choice said that participants were only compensated if they claimed to experience this phenomenon, and that the study used that as a basis to conclude presentiment was real, that would be suspicious. As it's written, this is just a trick. It seems important, but it's functionally irrelevant. We are looking for an answer that has a clear effect on the conclusion. The people studied who appeared to be experiencing presentiment often were not fully aware that they were, though monitoring equipment reported changes in bodily functions. This one is similar. It is about related information, but that information isn't super relevant to the conclusion. If anything, this might strengthen the argument, but we really are looking for an answer with a clear impact. If you are not sure, try to test the answers and see if you can get a clear impact by negating them, for instance. In that case, is the conclusion more or less likely? For this answer, not as far as I can tell. The methods used in most of the studies reviewed were rigorous enough that the results that they generated could be considered reliable. This choice could be a strengthener. It's really not. We already trust the study 100%. We're already trusting that the methodology was solid, as I said before, and the results were reliable. We have faith in the supporting evidence used. When, in the process of studying a phenomenon, researchers get unexciting results, they often forego publishing their findings. Here we go. We are looking for a weakener. This is a weakener. It's a very soft weakener. If what this choice says is true, it could show us how studies that the conclusion were based on could all be true, how the scientists could have reviewed every published study for the last 50 years, how we could trust the results of those studies completely, and how it could still be the case that the conclusion is less likely than it originally appeared. If people are publishing boring studies, then the exciting study results might seem to make up a larger portion of total study results than they actually do. This is an answer choice that plays by the GMAT rules and still effectively weakens the conclusion. So our best choice is A. The fact that critical reasoning has several rules and that they are quite restrictive makes it tricky. Yet that's also what makes it a skill that you can develop and master. If you learn the rules and you hone your comprehension skills, at a certain point, you will be familiar with the way arguments work. And the arguments that you are faced with get much easier and more routine to navigate. It's not that you will never run into a challenging one, but the more you prepare, the fewer and further between those challenging arguments will be. Until next time.